I was going to open up this with the funny thing about my buried anger, but there's not really anything that was that funny about it. I notice that my anger comes out when I sense that somebody is lying to me. Like, in other words, when they're upset with me, but they can't own it and they can't speak it. Because that was me through the years. That snake in the grass. That's been my work in those final layers, is to deal with my own self-deception around anger repression and how I see that in other people. Because I used to argue with people when they would never know that I was angry, because I was always calm and collected, and I would just say things. And somebody said to me once, you can like kick somebody's ass, but they enjoy it. I'm not proud of that. What it means is I wasn't feeling and expressing my true emotions. So there was anger coming through and control, but it was so soft and sweet that people wouldn't recognize it, or not even soft and sweet, just calm and collected, like a lot of teachers, really, that demeanor. So that demeanor was my trauma response, the demeanor of being calm and collected. And so, see, my ego was not the loud, angry ego. My ego was hold all that back and then suffer. So it's been weird, to say the least, awkward, to allow people to see me, this part of me, because of how they perceive anger, right? It's the same way that I perceived it. So I first had to deal with it in my personal life because, well, I was with somebody who could get angry. So as I got angry, that was allowed here in that relationship. But I noticed that in other personal relationships, there's still a lot of repression on that. I think Chester kind of spoiled me, to be honest with you, in terms of, I just thought that, I don't know what I thought. It's that he could express anger, so it was a perfect laboratory for me. I can totally see, though, how some of you are not surrounded by people who can feel and express anger. You might think that feeling and expressing anger is just wrong. Or if you actually see it in somebody, especially somebody that you know, you might think that something is wrong. When actually what was wrong was the whole time they were holding that back and suffering. It's really tricky, the shadows. 2024 is a couple of things for me. One is we could stop looking for done and just report our bodies, because we use that against each other. If I say, well, as I'm not looking at the other teachers and saying anything about done, I'm just talking about unconsciousness, trauma, and repression. That's really all that I'm talking about. If you notice, that's all that I'm talking about. That unconsciousness. I'm not saying I'm done and you're not, teacher, because there's not that identity with it. And people will think that, though. They'll think that if I get angry or loud about something, that I'm just identified with my position. And there are some people who think that if you say anything about anybody, it's coming from unprocessed. Like, you can't really even open your mouth and say anything about others, because if you do, that is ego. And that's a straitjacket of repression that I lived in for many years. And so I think that's why so many people liked me as a teacher, because I was really not very aggressive or even direct in some ways. And a lot of times I just wasn't emotionally honest myself. So, it's just awkward. It's like introducing myself to you guys. That's why I did the video not too long ago here, Meet the Real Scott Killaby. But I didn't say I'm done. I just said, I think I can be myself now. And that includes all the emotions. But what I didn't say, I didn't pretend to show up in a way that would impress you. Remember, I didn't do that. freedom, we can't even imagine, our consciousness right now can't even imagine what freedom would look like after repression work, because our consciousness is just trying to scare us right now. So if you look at somebody like me who gets angry, your consciousness might not see that as freedom. It might see that as, oh, I'm afraid of that. And so you might shadow that out. See how awkward that is? Because what I'm saying is, no, the repression of that anger creates suffering for you. So even though you don't like how I'm showing up, you're going to want to show up like that from time to time to be healthy. But if we shadow box each other, that every time somebody shows up angry, there's something wrong, we're just going to stay in repression. Really, all of us. I would just like to pull people into a field in spirituality where they can at least just share their honest thoughts and feelings. We're not there. Because from the honest thoughts and feelings, we're going to find that we are in repression. But for example, if I show up as a teacher who's just always quiet and peaceful, you don't even really get a chance to be triggered at me. Because I'm showing up too good for you. See, and that's why you hang out with some of these teachers. We're just showing up so good for you. We're not going to do anything to piss you off. Because you're our supply. So, we're going to continue to repress anger and show up as good because more people come. More anger repressors too. This morning I said, hey babe, what do you think about us just going back to Indiana and maybe I'll just be an attorney again? Because I don't think that I even knew what I was doing when I started teaching. Had I known that what I really want is just to be myself, fully to be conscious of that, had I known that that involved anger, I don't know that I would have willingly went in to become a teacher. Because, like, what teachers do you know who can do that? Or what students would be okay with that? Some would. But a lot of the anger repressors wouldn't. And that's where the shadows come from. But I was just joking. I don't want to run and hide. I just want to know, though, that if this doesn't feel right for me, that I have a place that I can go and still pay my bills. That's important. I don't want to feel trapped into something that doesn't feel right. So I'm going to stay and just keep talking. Do I still have shadows? Well, the thing about the Bentinho retraction, that statement about Bentinho was coming from anger repression. Like, I have to be good, and so I have to point him out as bad. The judgments that I have around anger repressing teachers don't have that energy on them. It's not the same thing. There's no contraction on it. That's why I didn't retract those statements. If I were to retract the statements about the anger repressing teachers, that would just be me repressing anger and trying to show up good. So I can't retract everything just so you guys think I'm good. I have to retract what's earnest for me. I was picking on Bentinho from anger repression. I'm not picking on anger repressing teachers from anger repression. I don't have it. I don't have the repression. So that's just me speaking. That's all that is. You don't have to agree, though. You're not required to agree, but just know that that's me speaking. After years of being really sick and not being able to speak up about things. But I also want you guys to keep me in check. Like, in other words, if you see some shadows, I'm willing to look. I am. And people are pretty open with me around me. Where I want to continue to look is, I want to make sure that we're creating a space here that is well, first of all, that's conducive to people coming out of repression. Because if there's a lot of shadows, it won't be. And I think that our work is not to not judge each other, because we will. And we want that to happen. To let that happen and then just go to the repression. So if I see a lot of people who are just being really careful not to say anything, I'm going to encourage you to go deeper, because you probably do have thoughts and feelings about what's going on and whatever it is. But if you come out and you have the thoughts and feelings and you share them about others, the only thing that I would say is just check into the repression. I won't tell you not to say those things, but I would encourage you to check into the repression, because once you're clear when you say things about other people, you don't suffer from it. So if there's suffering coming, we always want to look at suffering, to look at where something is coming from. But the last thing I want to say here about this is we have to be really careful believing that if somebody is feeling something that, or expressing some emotion, that they're not clear. Because think about it this way, when somebody dies, the only way to get clear is to feel. That's really the only way. When you get a divorce, the only way to really get clear is to feel all the stuff that you couldn't feel and to heal. So that's the answer for everything, is to feel into clarity. Because if you let your mind try to take you to clarity, you'll just stay safe. You'll just look at me, people like me who are getting angry, and you'll just say, well, he's not clear. And then that protects you. And just let people be angry and hurt and afraid, because some people who are feeling that are feeling it after a lifetime of holding that in their bodies. And when they're expressing that, for us to turn to them and say, you shouldn't feel that, is how we repressed emotion in the first place. We have to be really careful with that and create, I think, an atmosphere where we encourage people to feel and allow what hasn't been felt and expressed so far. And then we can talk about enlightenment. See, because some people are shadowing onto me that because I get angry, I'm not enlightened. But the problem here is that we didn't include anger in it. So we were still suffering. So that has to be included. And then once that's included, the suffering that comes from the anger repression is gone. But the anger may or may not go for a while, because it's a natural human emotion. Like just like you need sadness to heal from somebody dying, you're going to need some anger to heal from different conflicts and things that happen. We just need it. We need anger online to transform, just like we need hurt and fear. This is all emotional repression. More than being awake, we need to feel and allow. By feeling and allowing, we become more awake. We open to the full spectrum of emotions, and we don't suffer anymore. But suffering is different than feeling and expressing an emotion. In spirituality, people think that if you're feeling and expressing an emotion, you're necessarily suffering. That has to change. It absolutely has to. That's how we're all, or many of us are, getting sick.